My name is Sadie Clark, and I just turned 18. At my birthday party last night, my dad pulled me aside, his hand resting a little too firmly on my shoulder, and whispered, "When this is over, you're going to sign a few papers for your Uncle Darren, just a formality." I smiled. I nodded. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and quietly transferred every single dollar of my multi-million-dollar inheritance, my grandparents' cabin, savings, investments into an irrevocable trust, just in case. The next morning, everything changed. My parents woke up expecting a normal day. Instead, they found out that the lake cabin, the accounts, the investments, everything was locked behind a legal wall they couldn't touch. My dad went pale. My Uncle Darren, who had already signed a deal to sell property he didn't even own, started calling a lawyer before breakfast. And me, I just sat there, quietly eating cereal. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, but only if this story speaks to you. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what the weather feels like there right now. It always amazes me how far these stories travel. Just a quick note, this is a fictional story, with some elements enhanced using AI for storytelling. Now, let me take a step back and walk you through everything. The way it really unfolded? 6 years earlier, a summer that didn't make sense to me until last night. I was 12 when my grandfather, Arthur Clark, picked me up in his old pickup truck and drove me nearly an hour out to Silver Pine Lake. The cabin sat tucked back from the shoreline, surrounded by tall pine trees that blocked out most of the afternoon sun. The porch leaned slightly to one side. The screen door never closed properly, and the air always smelled like wood smoke, old paper, and something faintly sweet I could never quite name. "Grab the other end," Grandpa said, lifting a weathered fence rail. I did. We spent the entire morning replacing rotted posts along the south side of the property. He never rushed me. He showed me how to test the wood. Press your thumb into the grain. If it gives, it's already gone. Inside, Grandma Eleanor had iced tea and 2 sandwiches waiting on the kitchen table, the same table Grandpa built the year they got married. Later, she sat on the porch reading, and when I stepped outside, she tapped the chair beside her. We didn't talk much. We just watched the lake until the sunlight turned everything gold. That evening, Grandpa brushed the sawdust off his hands and looked at me. "This cabin stays in the family, Sadie," he said. Then he paused. "But family isn't always blood. Family is whoever shows up." I didn't really understand what he meant. I was 12. I thought he was just being poetic. He wasn't. That entire summer, I went back to Silver Pine Lake every weekend. I learned where the water heater leaked, which window stuck in the humidity, how to bleed the radiator before winter came. In October, Grandma taught me how to organize the bookshelves by color. She said it made the room feel warmer. Grandpa showed me the property lines, old iron stakes he had hammered into the ground himself decades earlier. What I didn't know was that, even then, my grandfather was already talking to a lawyer about that cabin and about me back home. Everything feels different. Our house in Brook Hollow is fine. 3 bedrooms, a patchy yard that always needs mowing, and a garage my dad, Martin Clark, turned into an office for his supply business. It's not a bad house, just not a warm one. My younger sister, Lily, is 10, and she has the bigger bedroom. It was redone last spring with soft purple walls and a desk lamp that probably cost more than everything on my shelves combined. My room still has the same worn carpet from whoever lived there before us. At dinner one night, my dad brings up the cabin. That place is just sitting there losing value. he says, slicing his steak. Taxes alone are draining money. We should sell it and reinvest. My mom, Rachel, nods like it's already decided. That makes sense. Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family, I say quietly. My dad laughs. Not harsh, just dismissive. You were a kid. Sadie. He was being nice. No one asks me anything after that. The conversation shifts to Lily's debate trophy. Regional finalist. My mom already framed it and hung it in the hallway. I won the district science fair 2 weeks ago. The ribbon is still sitting in my backpack. After dinner, I clear the plates. On the counter, half hidden under a grocery list, I notice a glossy flyer. Silverline Development, lakefront properties, premium acquisition opportunities. There's a handwritten phone number scribbled in the corner. Not my dad's handwriting. I put it back exactly where I found it. Upstairs, I sit on my bed and think about my grandparents' cabin, about the table my grandfather built with his own hands, about the way my grandmother always knew exactly what I wanted before I said a word. Then I think about that flyer. Someone is already turning that place into numbers. 2 years later, my grandfather dies. I'm 14. The funeral is quiet. Gray sky, damp grass, folding chairs sinking into the ground. I sit in the second row, holding his old handkerchief, the fabric worn soft, still carrying that faint pine scent. At the reception, I notice my dad and his brother, Uncle Darren, standing near the dessert table. They're not eating, just talking in low voices. Darren has a folder tucked under his arm. My dad keeps nodding. I catch one sentence. We should move on this before probate gets complicated. They're talking about the cabin. At the funeral. I say nothing. I'm 14. I don't have a voice here. I don't even realize yet that my grandfather already saw this coming. 2 years pass. I'm 16 when my grandmother, Eleanor, gets sick. By June, she's gone. The last time I see her, she holds my hand tighter than I expect. The cabin is yours. Sadie. She whispers, don't let them take it. Promise me. I promise. She squeezes my hand once, and that's it. After her funeral, my dad sits at the kitchen table like a man who just finished something. Now we can finally sort out the property. He says, relief, not grief. That same night, I hear him on the phone in the garage, pacing. Yeah, I agree. Let's get it moving. His voice sounds lighter than it has in months. I stand in the hallway holding a glass of water, and something settles in my chest. Heavy and cold. To them. This isn't a loss. It's clearance. I don't cry that night. I make a decision instead. I just don't know yet how I'm going to carry it out. What I didn't know yet was how to turn that decision into something real. From 16 to almost 18. The cabin became my quiet rebellion. Every Saturday morning, I drove out to Silver Pine Lake in a used car I bought with babysitting money. No one told me to go. No one expected me to care. But I did. I fixed the porch screen one weekend. Replaced the worn weather stripping on the back door the next. I climbed up carefully to clear pine needles from the roof because my grandfather once told me that's where leaks begin. It wasn't just maintenance. It was loyalty. At home, the language started to change. Slowly at first. Then all at once. The cabin stopped being my grandparents' place and became something else. Family property. My dad said at dinner one night, like it had always belonged to everyone. Uncle Darren started showing up more often, every other Sunday, sometimes with folders, sometimes with his laptop open, scrolling through real estate listings like he was already halfway through a deal. I tried to speak up once. What about Grandma's wish she wanted me to keep it? My mom placed her fork down gently, her voice calm but final. She was emotional at the end. Sadie. This is business? That word again. Business. They used it to replace everything that used to mean something. By the time I was 17, my dad stopped pretending to include me. When you turn 18, we'll figure this out as a family, he said. I understood exactly what that meant. His decision, not mine. One cold afternoon in November, I was alone at the cabin, clearing out a hallway closet filled with old blankets and boxes. That's when I found it. A sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in my grandmother's handwriting. Inside was a single business card. Helen Brooks, attorney at law, Clark Family Trust. My hands shook, but not from fear, from recognition. She left this for me. She knew I would be the one to find it. Not my dad. Not my uncle. Me. I slipped the card into my wallet and said nothing. I didn't call. Not yet. 3 months before my 18th birthday. The call came anyway. Thursday evening. I was sitting on my bed doing homework when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Sadie Clark. This is Helen Brooks. I was your grandparents' attorney. Her voice was steady, measured, careful. I need to speak with you before your birthday. There are things you need to know, and there isn't much time. That Saturday, I went to her office alone. She sat across from me, silver hair pulled back, glasses resting on a thin chain. The room smelled like old paper and coffee. She opened a folder and looked directly at me. Your grandparents came to me 6 years ago, she said. They established an irrevocable trust. She paused just long enough for the words to settle. The cabin, a savings account, and an investment portfolio. Total value just over $2 million. My breath caught. All of it is protected in the trust, she continued. And you, Sadie, are the sole beneficiary. For a moment, the room didn't feel steady. They hadn't just left me something. They had trusted me with everything. I sat there, staring at the document with my name printed clearly on the second line. Helen explained it calmly. My clients transferred everything into the trust while they were still alive. Legally. It never became part of their estate. It cannot go through probate. Your father and your uncle have no claim. She slid another paper toward me. A summary of the trust. Clean, official, final. The title to the cabin was recorded under the trust 6 years ago. She added, Your father doesn't know that. I swallowed. Why didn't they tell him? Helen paused, then spoke carefully. Your grandfather said this exactly. My sons will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt. The room went quiet. I looked down at the paper again. My name's still there. Solid and undeniable. Then she added something else. In the past month, someone has been making inquiries at the county office about the cabin's title. After that meeting, I started paying attention. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. The next Sunday, Uncle Darren came over for dinner like usual. After we ate, he and my dad disappeared into the garage. The door didn't close all the way. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard enough. I already signed the purchase agreement with Silverline. $450, Darren said. We just need the title clean before closing. My dad's voice followed. How do we do that? Quit claim deed. Dad's gone. Mom's gone. We're the legal heirs. We transfer it to ourselves. Record it. Then sell. A pause. Is that legal? It's standard. Nobody's going to question it. Another pause. Then my dad. Quieter. What about Sadie? My chest tightened. Darren answered immediately. She's 17. She can't do anything. By the time she turns 18, the sale will already be done. We'll give her a cut. 50 grand for college. She'll be grateful. I stepped back from the door, my hands suddenly cold. He had already signed a deal, $450,000, for a cabin he didn't own, on land controlled by a trust he didn't even know existed. That night, I sat on my bed and texted Helen 2 words. "They're moving." She replied in 3 minutes. "I expected that. Come see me Saturday. We'll prepare everything." I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling. In the next room, Lily was laughing at something on her show. Downstairs, my parents were talking like nothing was happening, and somewhere in my uncle's folder, there was a contract that meant nothing. He just didn't know it yet. Saturday morning, I sat across from Helen again. This time, she drew out a timeline on a legal pad, connecting dates like pieces of a strategy. "The title is already under the trust," she said. "If your uncle files a quitclaim deed, the recorder will reject it. The ownership record won't match. The property hasn't been in your grandparents' names for years." For the first time, I realized something clearly. They thought they were ahead, but they were already too late. Helen leaned back slightly, her voice still calm but more serious now. "If your uncle submits additional documents, something like an affidavit of heirship or even a falsified record, he could create what's called a cloud on title. It wouldn't give him ownership, but it could lock the property in legal disputes for months, maybe even a year." I felt my stomach tighten. "So I have to act first," I said. "You have to act on time," she corrected gently. She tapped the calendar on her desk. "The moment you turn 18, you become a legal adult. You can formally accept your role as successor beneficiary. Once you sign, I will file a Ellis pendens at the county office first thing the next morning. That places a public legal notice on the property. It freezes the title. No one can transfer or record anything against it." I nodded slowly. "What do I need to do?" "Show up and sign one document," she said. "I'll handle everything else." I hesitated. Should I tell my parents? Helen removed her glasses and looked directly at me. "Your grandfather didn't ask me to negotiate with them. He asked me to protect you." That settled it. When I got home, my dad was already in the kitchen, unusually cheerful. "Good news," he said. "I'm throwing you a birthday party. Big one. Whole family. Saturday night. You only turn 18 once." My mom smiled. Lily clapped excitedly. I smiled too. My dad was planning my birthday. My uncle was planning to sell my cabin. And I was sitting there, pretending everything was normal, knowing that in 9 days, everything would change. That night, lying in bed, was harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to go downstairs and say it out loud, to tell him I knew. But if I did, they would find another way. So I stayed quiet. And I waited. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to stay silent to protect yourself? Even when every part of you wanted to speak? Tell me. I read every comment. Because this story is just getting started. 5 days before my birthday. My mom sat down next to me on the couch. She used that careful tone she always saved for serious conversations. Calm. Measured. Almost rehearsed. "Now that you're almost 18. Sadie. There are some family decisions we should start making together. Together." The word didn't feel real. She continued, folding her hands in her lap. "The cabin costs money, taxes, insurance, repairs. Your dad's business hasn't been doing well. If we sell, we can clear the debt and set up a college fund for you and Lily. For both of you." I kept my voice steady. Grandma wanted me to keep it. For a second. Something sharp flickered across her face. Then it was gone. "Your grandmother was emotional at the end," she said softly. but emotions don't pay bills. Right on cue, my dad walked into the room. "I've already spoken to a buyer," he said. "Good offer. Clean deal." I looked at him. "Who's the buyer?" "A development company," he replied quickly. "Darren knows them." "What company?" He hesitated just a second too long. "Silverline. They're reputable." I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." He smiled and tapped my shoulder like we had just agreed on something important. "That's my girl." Later that night, Lily knocked on my door. She stepped inside quietly, still in her pajamas, her hair damp from a shower. "Sadie, yeah." She sat on the edge of my bed, pulling at a loose thread on the blanket. "Mom and Dad keep talking about the cabin at night," she said, "after I'm supposed to be asleep." I turned toward her. "What do you mean?" "They sound different," she said, "like excited, but also nervous." She looked at me carefully. "Is something going on?" I pulled the blanket over her legs. "Don't worry about it," I said gently. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. I had told them I would think about it. That wasn't a yes, and they knew it. 3 days before my birthday, Uncle Darren showed up without calling. I had just gotten back from the grocery store when I saw him leaning against his car in the driveway, like he had been waiting. He smiled wide. "Too easy." "Hey, kiddo. Got a minute?" We sat on the front steps. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice smooth and confident. "Here's the situation. Sadie, that lake property alone is worth around $450. I've got a buyer ready. Fast closing. Clean paperwork." He glanced at me. "You'd get $50,000? Cash? For college?" I let the number sit there. 50 out of 450. He smiled like it was generous. "You're almost 18, he added. "That's a lot of money at your age." I met his eyes. "Whose name is on the deed?" Uncle Darren for a split second. His smile faltered. Then it came back. "Your grandparents," he said. "But they're gone. It passes to your dad and me as next of kin." That wasn't true. He knew it. And I knew it. But he was counting on me not understanding. "I'll think about it," I said again. He stood up, brushing off his jeans. "Don't overthink it," he said. "Opportunities like this don't wait." Then he got in his car and drove away. Before he even reached the end of the street, I saw him already on the phone. I stood there for a moment, watching his car disappear down the street. Even before he reached the corner, he already had his phone to his ear, talking fast, confident, like everything was already done. That night, I texted Helen again. "They're moving faster." Her reply came within minutes. "Stay the course. 3 more days. 3 days." I told myself I could handle that. The night before my birthday, I drove out to the cabin alone. The road was quiet. Empty in that way, it only gets late at night. Silverpine Lake stretched out flat and dark under a pale half moon. The trees along the shore looked like shadows cut into the sky. I parked in the same gravel space my grandfather had leveled years ago, walked up the porch steps. The second one still creaked in the same place. Some things never changed. I sat in the chair beside the one he used to sit in. The air smelled like rain and pine. I opened my laptop. Helen had sent everything: the acceptance form, the beneficiary confirmation, a summary of the trust. Every page marked, organized, waiting for one thing: my signature. At midnight, I read every document carefully, twice. Then I closed the laptop and just listened to the lake. My grandfather used to sit in this exact spot and say something I never understood until now. Patience is not weakness. It is timing. I always thought he was talking about fishing. The tears came quietly, not overwhelming. Just there. I cried because I wished things were different. I wished my dad had been the kind of man who brought me here to fish instead of calculating what the land was worth. I wished my mom had asked what I wanted instead of deciding what made sense. I wished I didn't have to protect myself from my own family. But wishes don't matter in court. Documents do. I wiped my face, locked the door, and drove home, back in my room. I lay down and set my alarm, 11:45 p.m. In 6 hours. I would turn 18. In 7. Everything would change. At 11:50 I woke up. The house was completely silent. My parents had gone to bed. Lily's room was dark. I opened my laptop and joined the call. Helen appeared on the screen, glasses on, papers spread out in front of her under a desk lamp. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." We waited. When the clock turned midnight, she nodded. "You are now a legal adult. Let's begin." She walked me through everything one last time, calm and precise. I signed the acceptance of successor beneficiary form. 1 page, but it changed everything from that moment on. Every decision about the trust belonged to me, with Helen guiding the process. "Tomorrow morning at 8, I'll file a lease pendens," she said. "It's a public notice of legal interest. Once recorded, no one can transfer or sell the property while it's active." I hesitated. "What if they already filed something?" "Then it won't matter," she replied. "The trust was recorded years ago. Any conflicting document will be rejected." I looked down at the paper in my hand. My name, signed in ink. Above it, my grandparents' names. Helen's voice softened just slightly. "This isn't a trick. Sadie, this is your grandfather's last gift. You just had to be old enough to receive it." I glanced at the clock. 12:03 a.m. I was 18. The legal owner of everything they tried to take, and somewhere else in town. My uncle was still working, printing documents, believing he was about to win. He had no idea. It was already over. What I didn't know at the time was what was happening at that exact same moment. While I was upstairs signing my future into place, Uncle Darren was in his kitchen printing a quit-claim deed. 1 page. Clean. Simple. And completely illegal in his hands. He called my dad around 11:30. "Everything's ready," he said. "We file at 9. Office opens at 8. But I want Sadie distracted with birthday stuff first." My dad hesitated. "You sure about this? They're gone." Darren replied, "We're next of kin." "It's simple." It wasn't simple. It was fraud dressed up as paperwork. On his laptop. Darren also had the purchase agreement open. Silverline Development LLC. Purchase price $450,000. Closing in 30 days. If he failed to deliver clear title, he owed them $45,000 in penalties. Plus damages. He had signed that contract 2 months earlier, before checking ownership, before verifying anything. He assumed the cabin was his. He assumed no one had planned ahead. He had just gambled nearly $500,000 on something that was never his to sell. He just didn't know it yet. And in a few hours, he would find out. My birthday party started at 4 in the afternoon. The house was full. Neighbors, family friends, people from church, a couple of my dad's old business contacts. Around 20 people in total. There were balloons, a silver banner, a cake from the bakery downtown. I smiled. I thanked everyone. I opened gifts, a journal, a gift card, a picture frame, in my jacket pocket, folded carefully. Was the paper I signed the night before? I didn't need to touch it. It was already done. My dad stood near the cake and tapped his glass. The room quieted. I just want to say Sadie is officially an adult today, he said, smiling. Rachel and I are very proud of her. He paused, looking around. And as a family, we have some exciting plans ahead. Then he looked at me. Right. Sadie. Every face in the room turned. I held his gaze. Thanks, Dad, I said. Nothing more. He waited for a second, then laughed it off and raised his glass. The room followed. Conversation picked back up. Across the room, I saw Uncle Darren near the front door, checking his phone, typing quickly, his attention somewhere else entirely, waiting, planning, counting on tomorrow. As I walked past the window, Mrs. Harper, our neighbor from the cabin next door, reached out and lightly caught my arm. She leaned in close, her voice low, her lavender perfume soft but familiar. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Mrs. Harper leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Your grandmother would want you to know this, she said. I saw your uncle at the cabin last week. He wasn't alone. 2 men in suits. They were walking the property line with a measuring tape. My chest tightened. He brought buyers out there, she continued. Before he even owned it. That told me everything. He wasn't planning. He was already selling. Later, after the cake was cut and plates were passed around, my dad stood up again. This time his voice was louder, more controlled. The kind of voice people use when they want to make something official. Before we finish tonight, he said, I want to share something with everyone. He placed his hand on my mom's shoulder. Our family has been going through a difficult time financially. Some of you know about the business. It hasn't been easy. There were quiet murmurs around the room, but my parents left us something. He continued. The cabin out at Silver Pine Lake. I felt the words before I understood them, and, as a family, we've decided to sell it. It's the responsible thing to do. It will secure our future. We've decided. He looked directly at me. Sadie understands, he said. She knows this is what's best for all of us. Right. Every eye in the room turned toward me. Neighbors who had watched me grow up. Mrs. Harper near the window. Lily half hidden behind the couch. My mom smiled softly. This is what families do. We make sacrifices for each other. I set my fork down slowly. The sound echoed in the silence. I never agreed to sell the cabin. Dad? His smile didn't disappear, but it changed, tightened. She's just nervous, he said lightly. Big day. I'm not joking. Uncle Darren stepped forward from the doorway. Sadie. Come on. This isn't the time. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip of water, then set it back down. You're right, I said calmly. This isn't the time. I looked straight at him. The time is 8 a.m. Tomorrow. Silence. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he didn't move. No one did. One by one, people started leaving. Polite smiles, quiet goodbyes. The kind people use when they can feel something breaking but don't want to be there when it happens. Within half an hour, the room was nearly empty. Just family, Mrs. Harper, and 2 neighbors lingering near the door. As soon as the last guest stepped out, my mom turned toward me. Her voice was controlled, but sharp enough to cut. Do you have any idea what your father is dealing with right now? She stepped closer. He could lose this house, the one you live in every day. And you're holding on to a cabin you visit on weekends. I go there every weekend, I said quietly. That's not the point. She pressed her hands against the counter. We are a family. Families make decisions together. And if you actually cared about this family, you wouldn't need a lawyer telling you what to do. The room went still. I stared at her. How do you know about a lawyer? She didn't hesitate. Darren found the business card in your bag. Helen Brooks. Who is she? Sadie. My stomach dropped. Not from fear. From realization. They had been going through my things. Searching. Before I could answer. Mrs. Harper's voice cut through the room. That girl has every right to speak to a lawyer, she said firmly. My mom turned sharply. This is a family matter. Mrs. Harper didn't move. I knew Eleanor for 40 years. She said, I think I know what she would have wanted. The silence between them felt heavy. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Not yet. A moment later, Mrs. Harper left. The remaining neighbors followed, closing the door softly behind them. Now it was just us. My dad, my mom, Uncle Darren, Lily, and me. My dad walked over and closed the kitchen door. The hum of the overhead light filled the space. He pulled out a chair, sat down slowly, and folded his hands on the table. His voice dropped, steady and deliberate. Here's what's going to happen, Sadie. My dad leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. Tomorrow morning, Darren and I go to the county office. We file the paperwork. The cabin sells. You get your share. And we move forward as a family. I held his gaze. What's my share? 50,000. He said. I didn't look away. Out of how much he didn't answer. From the doorway. Uncle Darren spoke instead. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I turned back to my dad. And if I say no, his jaw tightened. If you fight this, he said, you're on your own. No help with college. No more living here. The room went completely still. Even the sound of the house seemed to fade. You're threatening to kick me out on my 18th birthday, I said quietly. I'm asking you to be part of this family. I pushed my chair back and stood up. My hands were shaking. But my voice wasn't. I am part of this family. Dad. I'm the part that keeps promises. I walked past him. Past my mom. Past Uncle Darren. Lily was sitting on the stairs, her knees pulled to her chest, watching everything with wide eyes. I didn't stop. Upstairs. I closed my door and sat on the edge of my bed, trying to steady my breathing. My dad thought his deadline was 9 in the morning. He had no idea Helen's deadline was 8. I looked at the paper in my hands, the one I had already signed, the one that changed everything. My father had just told me I would lose my home if I didn't give up something that was legally mine. My mother said I didn't love them. My uncle was preparing to file forged documents in the morning. And all I could think was that my grandmother had seen this coming. She knew exactly who they would become when money was involved. And she had planned for it long before any of this started. If someone you loved ever prepared something to protect you, even after they were gone, I understand now what that means. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, the county recorder's office opened. The lights flickered on. A clerk stepped behind the counter, and Helen was already there. Gray blazer, leather folder in hand. She approached the desk and placed 2 documents in front of the clerk, a certified copy of the Clark Family Trust, and a lis pendens notice. The clerk reviewed everything carefully, checked the title records, then stamped it. Recorded. From that moment on. Anyone who searched the cabin's title would see it clearly. Clark Family Irrevocable Trust. Helen Brooks, trustee. Sadie Clark, beneficiary. At 8:14 in the morning, Helen called me. It's done, she said. Everything was locked in place. And for the first time, I realized they weren't in control anymore. At 8:14 my phone buzzed. It was Helen. It's done, she said. The lis pendens is recorded. The property is flagged. Anything they try to file will be rejected. I sat at the kitchen table, slowly eating cereal. Upstairs, I could hear my dad moving around, getting dressed. The sound of a closet door sliding, a belt buckle clicking. My mom was in the kitchen beside me, pouring coffee like it was any other morning. Everything sounded normal. At 8:30, my dad and Uncle Darren came downstairs together. My dad was wearing his button-down shirt, the one he used to wear to meetings when his business was still holding on. Darren had his usual folder tucked under his arm. "We'll be back by lunch," my dad said, grabbing his keys. I looked up from my bowl. "Good luck," I said. He paused for just a second. Something in my voice. Maybe. Or my face. Then he turned and walked out. I finished eating, rinsed my bowl, dried it, and put it away. And then, I waited. I didn't see what happened at the county office, but I know exactly how it went. Because Helen stayed there on purpose. At 9:05, Uncle Darren stepped up to the counter and slid the quit-claim deed forward like it was routine. My dad stood behind him, calm, confident, expecting it to be quick. The clerk took the document, typed in the property number, checked the system. Then she stopped. "I can't record this," she said. Darren leaned in. "Excuse me. The title is held under the Clark Family Irrevocable Trust," she explained. "Recorded 6 years ago. There is also a les pendens filed this morning." "That's not possible," Darren said quickly. "Our parents own that property. The deed was transferred years ago." The clerk replied, "The ownership record is clear. This document doesn't match." My dad stepped forward. "There's no trust. We would know about it." "I recommend you speak with the trustee listed here," she said, calmly. "Helen Brooks." Darren's hand flattened against the counter. His face drained of color. That name was no longer a secret. It was on public record now. My dad turned to him slowly. "You said this was simple. I didn't know about any trust." Darren muttered. "You're a real estate agent." My dad snapped. "How did you not check the title?" Darren didn't answer. The clerk spoke again. "Gentlemen, I'll need you to step outside." Helen was sitting near the door the whole time, watching. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. At 9:22, my phone rang. I was sitting on the front porch, watching the neighbor's sprinkler sweep across the lawn. "What did you do?" My dad's voice came through, tight and shaking. I could hear traffic behind him. He was still in the parking lot. I kept my voice steady when I answered him. "I accepted what Grandpa and Grandma left me. That's all? You went behind our backs." My dad snapped. "With some lawyer we've never even heard of. Helen Brooks has been their attorney for 6 years. I said, "You just never asked." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, heavy and uneven. "That cabin is my parents' property," he said. "I'm their son. They would have left it to me." I stared out at the yard, watching the sprinkler sweep in slow arcs. "They loved you," I said quietly. "They just didn't trust you with it." The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, he spoke again. "We'll fight this. You can try." I replied, "The trust is irrevocable. It can't be undone, not even by me." "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do. I've had 3 months to learn." He hung up. No goodbye. Just silence. I lowered the phone slowly. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, not from anger, but from the weight of what I had just said. The man who taught me how to ride a bike was now the same man trying to take something that was never his. I sat there until the shaking passed. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. "Sadie Clark," a man said. This is Daniel Briggs from Silverline Development. We need to talk. His tone was sharp, efficient, already moving ahead of the conversation. We have a purchase agreement with Darren Clark for the Silver Pine property. He guaranteed clear title. We've just been informed there's a alias pendens on the parcel. That's correct. I said. Can you explain? My uncle does not own that property. I replied. He never did. It's been held in an irrevocable trust for 6 years. I'm the sole beneficiary. There was a pause. Papers shifting. He represented himself as the heir. Daniel said, I understand, but that doesn't create ownership. Another pause. Is there any chance you'd consider selling? He asked. We're prepared to make a competitive offer directly to you. The property is not for sale. His voice hardened slightly. Understood. Then we'll pursue legal action against Mr. Clark. I gave him Helen's contact information within the hour. She confirmed everything to their legal team. The trust was valid. Darren had no authority. The contract was based on false representation. By early afternoon, Silverline had already moved forward with a claim against him, $45,000 in penalties, plus additional damages. Later that day, Helen called again. There's something else, she said carefully. The quitclaim deed your uncle attempted to file included a notary stamp. And it doesn't match any registered notary in the county. I closed my eyes. That's a crime, isn't it? Yes, she said. It appears to be forged. My uncle hadn't just tried to take the cabin. He broke the law to do it. At 2 p.m. My dad came home. He walked through the door like he was carrying something heavy, something invisible. My mom was already in the kitchen. Her face flushed from crying. I stayed where I was, sitting at the table. He sat down across from me and didn't speak right away. Then, quietly, I'm going to lose this house. His voice sounded empty. The bank wants $180,000. The business is gone. That cabin was supposed to save us. I'm sorry, I said. I know things are hard. Then help us. I met his eyes. The cabin was never your solution. It was their gift to me. A gift. He let out a short, bitter laugh. For what? You're 18. What do you need a lake house for? It's not about what I need, I said. It's about what they wanted. My mom stepped forward from the kitchen. They weren't thinking clearly at the end. She said, they were old. They were clear enough to plan this 6 years in advance. I replied. My dad slammed his hand against the table. I'll contest the trust. Before my dad could say anything else, a voice came through my phone. I had called Helen before he walked in and left the line open on speaker, not to trap him, just to save time. Mr. Clark, she said, calm and professional, contesting an irrevocable trust established 6 years prior to the grantor's deaths, with full legal capacity and proper documentation, would cost more in legal fees than the property itself. I would strongly advise against it. The kitchen went silent. Even the small drip from the faucet sounded loud. My dad looked at me, not the way he had earlier, not with anger. For the first time, I saw something else in his eyes. Recognition. 2 hours later, the phone rang again. My dad answered in the living room. I stood in the hallway, close enough to hear every word. Silverline is suing me, Uncle Darren said. His voice sounded stripped raw. $45,000 in penalties, plus damages. They're saying I committed fraud. My dad didn't raise his voice. Did you? I thought we owned it. You're a real estate agent, my dad said coldly. You check titles for a living. How did you not verify it? I assumed. You assumed? My dad repeated. And now everything's gone because you assumed. There was a pause. You wanted the money too, Darren shot back. I didn't forge a notary stamp. Silence. Then Darren again. Quieter this time. I didn't forge it, I just used one. That's still forgery. My dad said, you know that. Darren's breathing grew heavier. I need a lawyer. So do I, my dad replied. Then after a brief pause, don't call this house again until you've talked to one. He hung up. I heard him sit down on the couch. The springs creaked under his weight. Then nothing. I went upstairs. Lily's door was open. She was sitting on her bed, headphones around her neck, eyes wide. Is Uncle Darren in trouble? She asked. Yes, I said. And Dad? I sat beside her. Dad made bad choices, I said carefully. But Uncle Darren made worse ones. She nodded slowly, trying to understand something too big for her. I left her room and went to mine, sat by the window. Outside, everything looked the same. A dog walker passed by. A sprinkler hissed across a lawn. The world didn't stop. But something had changed. I didn't feel like I had won. I felt like someone who had just walked through a fire and hadn't yet turned around to see what was burned over the next 3 weeks. Everything unraveled, one piece at a time. Silverline filed a civil lawsuit against Uncle Darren, breach of contract, misrepresentation. They demanded the $45,000 penalty plus another $60,000 in damages and legal fees. The papers were delivered to his apartment. He signed for them himself. The county referred the forged notary issue to the district attorney's office. An investigator was assigned. His real estate license was suspended. Just like that. His income disappeared. The story spread. Not because I told anyone, I didn't. But records are public, and people talk, by the second week. Everyone knew some version of it. At the lake, at church, at the grocery store. Darren called me once. I answered, Sadie, please. He said, ask your lawyer to remove the lease pendants. If the title clears, I might be able to negotiate with them. Reduce what I owe. I listened. Then I said quietly, the lease pendants protects my property. It stays. There was a long pause on the line, and for the first time, I realized something clearly. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about consequences. Your grandparents would be ashamed of you. I let his words hang there for a moment. Then I answered quietly, they're the ones who set this up. They chose this. They chose me. So I don't think shame is what they'd feel. He hung up without another word. I set my phone down and stared at the wall. There was a framed photo on my desk. Me and my grandfather, standing beside the fence we fixed that summer when I was 12. I didn't move it. I didn't need to. My dad never contested the trust. Helen had been right. The legal cost alone would have buried him, and the case would have gone nowhere. An irrevocable trust, properly documented and recorded years in advance, is almost impossible to break. Instead, he did something he should have done long before any of this. He sold the supply store, at a loss. Just enough to negotiate a repayment plan with the bank. The house stayed. But barely. The savings didn't. My mom went back to work. First time in 10 years. She took a job at a pharmacy on Maple Avenue. The same chain she worked at before Lily was born. She didn't talk about it much. When people asked, she said she wanted to stay busy. No one believed that. But no one pushed. The town knew. Not every detail, but enough. The version that spread was simple. 2 brothers tried to sell a cabin that wasn't theirs, and their daughter stopped them. Some people called me brave. Some people called me cold. I didn't correct either of them. My dad and I didn't speak for 2 weeks after that morning. The house felt different. Quiet in a way that didn't feel temporary. Like something had shifted and wasn't coming back. One afternoon, Mrs. Harper stopped by. She brought a pie. Apple. Still warm. Your parents made their choices, she said, setting it down on my desk. But they're still your parents. Don't carry their shame. That belongs to them. I nodded. Later that week, Lily called me. She was at a friend's house. Her voice was softer than usual. I don't understand everything, she said, but I'm sorry they put you through that. My throat tightened. Thanks. Lily, are you okay? I'm getting there. A few days later, on a quiet Saturday morning in late April, I drove out to the cabin. The trees along the road were starting to bloom, white and pale pink against the dark water of the lake. I unlocked the door with the same key my grandfather gave me when I was 14, in case you ever need it. He had said. I didn't realize then that I would. The cabin smelled exactly the same. Pine, old books, and that faint sweetness I could never name. I walked through every room slowly. The kitchen table he built was still solid, still level. The bookshelves my grandmother arranged by color were exactly the same. The bedroom where she used to read to me. The porch where my grandfather and I would sit, watching the lake turn gold in the evening light. Nothing had changed, except everything. At the desk near the window, I opened the top drawer. Inside was an envelope. My name written on the front in my grandfather's handwriting. Helen had told me it would be there. I opened it carefully. A single page. Blue ink. His handwriting uneven toward the bottom, the way it always got when he was tired. He wrote that he knew his sons would try to sell the cabin. He said he didn't blame them. My dad was his son. He loved him. But he never understood the difference between something that has value and something that is valuable. He wrote that he chose me, not because I was perfect, but because I cared about the place itself. Because I asked if the roof needed fixing before I ever asked what it was worth. I read the last line twice. Take care of it. It took care of you first. I folded the letter slowly. Then I walked outside and sat down on the porch. The same chair, the same view, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt quiet in a different way. I sat there on the porch for a long time, just breathing, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, the kind that feels earned. A week later, Helen called me again. Good news. She said, the lease pendants can be withdrawn now. There's no longer an active threat to the title. Once it's cleared, the trust will show as the sole owner. Clean. No claims. No complications. I nodded. Even though she couldn't see me. And Darren, I asked. He settled with Silverline. She said. Paid the $45,000 penalty through a personal loan. The deal is over. She paused before continuing. The district attorney is reviewing the forged notary. It could be a misdemeanor. Possibly a felony. His license is still suspended. He won't be able to work for a while. I let that sink in. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel relieved. I felt tired. Like I had been sick for a long time and was only just starting to recover. There's one more thing, Helen added. In the trust documents, your grandparents created a separate education fund, $50,000. It's been accruing interest for 6 years. It's now just over 58. My throat tightened. 50,000. The same number my dad offered me like a compromise. The same number Darren tried to use to convince me, except my grandparents had already planned it. Quietly, carefully, without asking for anything in return. Are you still there? She asked. Yeah, I said softly. I'm here. They would be proud of you. I just kept a promise. I replied. That week, I enrolled at Brook Hollow Community College, environmental science, forestry as a minor. The campus was 20 minutes from the cabin, closer than my parents' house. When I filled out the housing forms, I paused at one question: current address. For the first time, I wrote the cabin's address, and it felt like telling the truth. A few days later, I asked my parents to meet me at a small coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. Not the house, not the cabin. Somewhere in between. They arrived together. My dad was wearing an old flannel shirt I hadn't seen in years. One of my grandfather's. My mom held her purse close, the way she does when she's nervous. We ordered drinks. Sat down. I waited until the cups were in front of us. "I love you," I said. "Both of you." They looked at me, surprised. "I need you to know that before I say anything else." My mom nodded slightly. My dad didn't speak. "The cabin is not for sale." I continued. "Not now. Not ever." Silence. I'm not going to feel guilty for keeping a promise. Grandma trusted me with it because she knew no one else would. My mom started to respond. "We just wanted what was best. Then be honest about what happened." I said, "You tried to sell something that wasn't yours. You threatened me. You went through my things." She stopped talking. My dad stared into his coffee. "I'm not cutting you out of my life," I said. "But if we're going to have a relationship, it can't be about money, or guilt, or what you think I owe you." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my dad finally said, quietly, "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix it today," I replied. I stood up, left cash on the table, and walked out into the sunlight. Behind me. He nodded once. It wasn't much, but it was something. A few weeks later, Lily came out to the cabin. She showed up on a Sunday afternoon with a pizza box and that oversized hoodie she always wore. "I brought lunch," she said. "Hope you like pepperoni." "Always." We sat on the porch, plates on our laps. The lake still in front of us. A heron stood near the water. Perfectly still. Lily ate slowly, like she had something to say but didn't know how. "I didn't know," she said finally, "about any of it." "I know. Was I part of the problem?" I looked at her. She was still just a kid. Still trying to understand things no one had explained to her. "You didn't choose any of this," I said. "We were both just kids." She nodded. Then looked out at the lake. "It's really beautiful here." Grandma used to say that every time she sat there. Lily glanced at the empty chair beside me. "Can I come back anytime?" She leaned her head against my shoulder for a second, then sat up and took another bite. We didn't talk about the lawsuit, or the trust, or anything that had happened. We talked about school, about the heron, about fixing the dock. Simple things, normal things, and for the first time, I understood something clearly. The cabin didn't just protect what my grandparents left behind, it gave us a place to start again. Early June, 6 in the morning, I sit on the porch with a cup of coffee. Watching the mist lift slowly off Silverpine Lake, the water is still. The trees stand sharp against the pale sky, dark green against soft light. Somewhere out on the lake, a bird calls, 2 long notes, then quiet again. I used to think this story was about winning. It isn't. There's no winning when the people who hurt you are the same ones who were supposed to protect you. There's no moment where everything feels resolved. No clean ending where someone hands you a prize for surviving something that should never have happened in the first place. But I kept a promise. And that matters. For the first time in my life, I'm standing somewhere that truly belongs to me. Not because I fought harder than anyone else, not because I was smarter or stronger, because 2 people loved me enough to see what was coming. They saw the storm long before I did, and they built something that could hold. My grandparents couldn't change who my parents were. They couldn't make my dad less desperate, or my mom less afraid. They couldn't stop my uncle from chasing money that was never his. But they could make sure I had ground to stand on. Real ground. I take a slow sip of coffee and look out across the water. The mist fades. The lake turns clear, and in that quiet, I finally understand something simple. Some things have value, but some things are valuable, and only one of those is worth protecting. They couldn't stop Uncle Darren from chasing money that was never his, but they made sure I had something real to stand on. I think about the letter still resting in the drawer inside, about my grandfather's words. The difference between something that has value and something that is valuable. This cabin has both. One can be counted, priced, sold. The other can't. And for 2 years, my family was looking at the wrong one. I take another sip of coffee as the last of the mist lifts from the lake. The water turns a clear, steady blue, stretching out without interruption. Nothing about this place is loud. It doesn't demand attention. It just stays. Solid. Quiet. Certain. The same way my grandparents were. I used to think strength meant fighting harder, proving something, winning. But standing here now, I understand something different. Sometimes strength is choosing what not to give away. Sometimes it's keeping a promise, even when it costs you something, even when it changes everything. The dock creaks softly as the water moves against it. A breeze passes through the trees, carrying that familiar scent of pine and old wood. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm holding on to something. I feel like I belong to it. And that changes everything. If you choose to stand your ground as I did to defend what truly matters and keep your promises even in difficult times, right, I support it. If you choose to do otherwise, whether for practical reasons or family pressure, and have to compromise your self-worth, right, I'm making a trade-off. Every opinion deserves respect. And if you're still hesitant, still thinking it over, right, maybe. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that shape who we are. There was a moment when everything I believed about family, trust, and belonging quietly fell apart, and in that silence, I had to decide who I was going to be. I didn't choose the easy path. I chose to keep a promise. And through that choice, I learned something I'll carry for the rest of my life. Love isn't proven by sacrifice without limits, but by respect, honesty, and the courage to protect what truly matters. What stayed with me most wasn't the conflict or the loss. It was the realization that someone had believed in me long before I believed in myself. My grandparents didn't just leave me a place. They gave me a foundation. They showed me that real value isn't measured in money, but in meaning, in memories, and in the quiet strength to stand your ground when it matters most. If this story made you feel something, then you already have something valuable to share. Your experiences, your choices, your voice, they can inspire someone who feels alone right now. So don't hesitate to leave a comment and share your story. You are part of a community where every voice matters. If you found meaning here, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video so more people can find it too. I'd love to see you in the next story.
Welcome to Family Confessions. Our stories go beyond entertainment, helping viewers recognize toxic behaviors, understand boundaries, and reflect on their relationships, while reinforcing self-worth and the strength to heal and move forward. Each video follows a structured workflow ensuring quality and value for our audience. Thank you for being here.